Now, I know I just talked about the Tea Party and I railed on them for a long time, for quite a bit of time. But I believe in listen, if you do a good thing, round of applause to you. If you do a bad thing, I'm going to slap you on the wrist. And I slap Republicans on the wrist all the time on this show. I slap progressives on the wrist all the time on this show. But there's a Republican today that deserves our praise. Yes, there is one. Yes, there is one. And he is the governor of the state that I currently reside, the state of Virginia. A couple of days ago, or just yesterday rather, depending upon when you listen to this show, a couple of days ago, Governor Bob McDonnell made a historic move by restoring voting rights for nonviolent felons who have served their time and did a crime and served their time in society. Instead of waiting for nonviolent ex-felons to petition to have their rights restored, the governor's office will now automatically restore those rights once sentence has been served. This process will take a bit of time to get up and running because there is a backlog of tens of thousands of ex-felons waiting to have their rights restored in the state of Virginia. However, as long as individuals have served their sentence and face no pending felony charges and have paid all their court costs, they will have their rights back because the governor says he is a governor that believes in second chances. And I got to applaud this governor, and a lot of civil rights organizations have done the same thing. The NAACP has applauded him, the Urban League has applauded him, the Virginia Black Caucus, legislative Black Caucus have applauded him because this is the right thing to do. Ben Jealous, the president of the NAACP, said the following. He says that we have the responsibility to reintegrate people back into society that have, that is how we get safer, that is how we get stronger. And I agree with Ben Jealous and all those individuals that fought for this. And I think it's something that's very, very important, especially as we come into 2014. Now, whether the governor believes it or not, African Americans are disproportionately affected by these felon non-voter laws or by this non-restoration of rights. Restoring rights to thousands and thousands and thousands of people, whether black, white, Hispanic, or other, means you expand the voting pool. More people can now vote. And as we go into the 2014 election, brown people and African Americans voting is going to be critical for this progressive movement to continue to work at the speed that we're working at and really want to get the change that we really want. I've talked about this before on the Fowler show, where African Americans made up almost 12 to 13% of this voting population, more than they actually represent in the real population. Which means if African Americans turn out again in record numbers like they did in 2012 rather, we can see another tide-turning election where Democrats and progressives and people that believe in social justice, people believe that empowering our communities can actually win an election again. This restoration of rights in the state of Virginia is just one step in the right direction, especially when we've seen almost every state legislature in this country do the opposite and find ways to suppress African Americans from voting, to suppress senior citizens from voting, to suppress young people from voting. Finally, America, we have found a governor, be it Republican or Democrat, that is willing to stand up for an America of a second chance. And a governor is willing to stand up and say, I will not disenfranchise, but rather I will re-enfranchise or franchise people to the voting process. So Governor McDonnell gets a round of applause from me, and he should from everybody at Fowler Nation. But this is a call. This should be a call to action. If Governor Bob McDonnell can restore felons' rights in the Commonwealth of Virginia, one of the states that's so history is so deeply rooted in racism and a degradation of difference. There's so much more that we can do in this country to change how African Americans vote and to stop the disenfranchisement of African American voters. This is not just an African American issue. Progressives, Democrats, independents, having more people as part of our voting process expands our democracy. Because democracy with a capital D means that everybody is part of it. And if we stop people and we disenfranchise people from our voting population, that means we're really not a democracy with a capital D, are we? Maybe we're a democracy with a little d. We got to understand that, and we've got to do more, and we've got to do better for our friends, for our relatives, for our neighbors, and for our associates. And that means, America, it is time to get to work. It is time to fight back all the voter suppression laws that have been put in place in lots of parts of this country. But beyond that fact, it's time for us to call our governor, wherever you're listening to the show from, if you're listening from Pennsylvania, if you're listening from Michigan, if you're listening from Oklahoma, Arkansas, California, call your governor and demand them to follow in the footsteps of Bob McDonnell and restore the rights of those that have done their crime, but they've also paid their time. We'll be right back on the Fowler Show after this break. Go absolutely, positively nowhere.